I'd like to call the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners regular meeting for tonight, March 2nd, 2016 to order. Clerk, can we please have a roll call?
We have 11 present and 1 absent.
Okay, let the record show Commissioner Sorich is ill this evening. Commissioner Henderson, can you please lead us in the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance?
Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anyone in the audience tonight wishing to give public comment on an agenda item this evening? Anyone with public comment on an agenda item this evening? Seeing none, we'll move into the approval of the minutes from the February 17th, 2016 regular meeting. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting, February 17th, 2016.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Seeing nothing on the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There are no items not to be addressed or added to the agenda tonight, which goes to my chief executive report. I'll keep this very brief. I would like to draw some special attention, although it is posted and whatnot, but this Saturday, March 5th at 1 o'clock at the Wise River Community Center in Beaverhead County, there will be Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners will be part of a special meeting that is being held between Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners, Anaconda, Deer Lodge Council of Commissioners, and the Beaverhead County Commissioners to entertain the creation of a proposed fire district in the Wise River, Montana area. That area is kind of intersected by all three of our counties, and so therefore the need to have one special meeting of all three governing bodies to take this up for discussion. So again, that is at 1 o'clock on March 5th. And I believe if there's going to be Commissioner Walker, is going to be putting his bus driving skills to work, and he'll be driving a Butte-Silver van. So if folks want to take advantage of that ride share, get in touch with Commissioner Shaw, and she will give you further details. But for the public's information, that is again 1 o'clock this Saturday. I would also like to announce that our Butte Economic Development Coordinating Council, real quick history there. And if you recall, we had an ad hoc committee that involved members of this council a couple of years ago that worked with me to kind of basically educate ourselves relative to all of the economic development efforts and organizations going on in Butte. And over the course of about a 9-month period, there was a lot of information gained that resulted in some recommendations. And one recommendation, I think, was a formal recommendation to coordinate more officially among all of Butte-Silver major economic development groups, thus the formation of the Butte Economic Development Coordinating Council. It includes Butte-Silver and our economic development and community development offices. It also includes the Chamber of Commerce, the Convention and Visitor Bureau, and the Tourist Business Improvement District, the Butte Local Development Corporation, Headwaters RCD, MERDI, and some of our other economic development and large employee groups. There's some subcommittees, and one of those subcommittees is the Integrated Marketing Group, because if you recall, also another one of the main recommendations that came out of that ad hoc committee was that Butte-Silver needs to do a better coordinated job marketing what we have to offer here on a quality of life, economic, recreational, other scales. And so this integrated marketing group has been working very effectively across the various groups. And one of the most recent ones that's ready to get kicked off here now in March is a social media campaign that will include Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram accounts, as well as a website landing page. There's going to be blogs and lists and the like as part of that. The BEDCC, that's the Butte Economic Development Coordinating Council, has asked me to help promote it to all of our commissioners up here, so we at least know that it's afoot. It's a 6-month social media marketing campaign to really push Butte and what Butte has to offer out to the world of social media, which really has limitless boundaries if you look at it from that perspective. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities on how individuals, both within the local government, within the local community, can get involved in this. And so Kristen Rosa is our point person here at Butte-Silver. And so if you have questions or want to let her know of things that are going on in your district, in your organization, if you're an organization in Butte-Silver that you want to see promoted on this site. And there's also going to be some sort of a deal that's a takeoff that has been successful in other communities, where we offer the Instagram account for a week for an individual or an organization to host, where it's kind of like a week in the life of Butte from the perspective of whoever the individual or entity is that hosts that account for a week. And if you don't know what Instagram is or any of these other things, don't worry about it. Call Kristen, and I'm sure she'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you on it. But this is a really innovative new approach to marketing Butte-Silver, and it's something that we haven't never done before. We're not aware of any really coordinated efforts coming from any of our other Butte cities or Montana cities. And really, at the end of the day, what this is it's Butte making itself competitive with the other communities in Montana for economic development opportunities, and just kind of promoting our quality of life here. So I would encourage you to get in touch with Kristen, and I'll have more information as well to kind of let folks know how they can plug into this, even if you just want to kind of keep tabs on how the marketing campaign is going. And last but not least, I am very pleased to announce that we have gotten an acceptance of an offer for our IT manager. If you recall, we've been at this for a while now, trying to find our top candidate for our new information technology manager, and we're pleased to announce that Mr. Mike McKillips is going to be our next IT manager. He'll be working in the finance and budget department while we work in transitioning IT into its own standalone department, but he'll be working with Danette, and we don't even have a start date for Mr. McKillips yet. But a little bit about Mike: I believe he's a Florida native. He will be coming to us from now he is currently the IT manager for the Idaho State Police. And so he'll be leaving his job in Boise to come work for us as our first IT manager here in Butte-Silver. He previously worked for a few years with the state of Montana's Department of Administration up in Helena, where he did very well up there before leaving for a job in Florida, where he went back to be with some family that needed his attention. But he's been dying to get back to Montana ever since, and we were able to afford him that opportunity here. And so we'll give you more details as they become available on when his start date will be. But I would just like to thank our search committee, our IT committee. Commissioner Morgan's been part of that since the beginning, and that IT committee, through Commissioner Morgan's expertise, as well as others such as I think primarily Dr. Phil Curtis, Ray Rogers, Ed Medish. They've had a lot to do with helping us get this position out there, described well and advertised well. And so Mr. McKillips is the cream of the crop from a field of 50 applicants for this position. And he beat out some pretty tough customers as far as what we were looking at here. And so I'm confident that we've definitely got the best individual for the job, and we look forward to welcoming him on board. And you guys up here will all get to know him pretty well as we move forward with our streaming project here at the council. And so I know Mike's excited to get going. So that's good news. And that concludes my chief executive report. So we're going to do a little bit of jostling here, moving into section 1. We're going to do the bid openings first. We have 3 of them. Bid opening communications 16-66, as well as communications 16-68. County Attorney, do we have proof of publication on those bids?
Mr. Chief Executive, we have proof of publication for items 2, 3, and 4 on the agenda, and all appear to be in order.
Okay, and number 2 for the record is a public hearing that we'll hit after we do the presentation by Danette Gleason and Pat Burt on our comprehensive annual financial report. So with that, I'll call on Dory Skrukrud, who's sitting in on behalf of the Greenway Service District this evening, requesting Council of Commissioners scheduling a bid opening for the Silverbow Creek Trailhead construction. Ms. Skrukrud?
Thank you, Chief Executive Vincent and members of the council. My name is Dory Skrukrud. I'm the project manager for the Silverbow Creek Greenway. This particular project is a trailhead located in the small community of Silverbow. It's at the end of the segment that we just finished this fall. And I think it's going to be a great service to folks out there. I know that my office mate, Kristen Rosa, is excited that folks from the industrial park could conceivably ride their bicycles from Butte out to the industrial park, and they'll have a little rest station there. So we do have 3 bids this evening. The first bid is from Swank Enterprises, Kalispell, Montana.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond from a licensed surety company in the amount of 10% that does appear to be in order.
Thank you. Dory?
And I would note that there were 2 addendum that were issued on this project, and they have noted receipt of those addendums. So the bid from Swank is $636,687.00. 636,687.
Okay.
The second bid is from Intermountain Construction Services in Butte, Montana. They do acknowledge receipt of both addendum also.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond from a licensed surety company that in the amount of 10% that does appear to be in order.
Very good. Dory?
The bid from Intermountain Construction Services is $509,678.90. 509,678.90.
Okay.
The final bid is from Montana Civil Contractors, Inc. from Belgrade, Montana.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond from a licensed surety company in the amount of 10% that does appear to be in order.
Very good.
Again, Montana Civil Contractors, Inc., acknowledging receipt of the 2 addendum, and their bid is in the amount of $581,417, 581417.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Henderson?
Mr. Chief Executive, Dory, can you tell us what the engineer's estimate was on this?
Yes, I can. One moment.
We hadn't let you ask that one in a while. so.
You haven't had a chance to ask that? Well, I had it here. Our engineer's estimate was $480,393.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to refer the bids back to Public Works Department in conjunction with the Greenway Service District to come back to this body with their recommendations.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to refer bids back to Public Works in conjunction with the Greenway Service District. Nothing on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Communication number 16-68. Lori Casey, Assistant Planning Director, who has the Planning Director, John Sesso, sitting in for her tonight, of the Butte Planning Department, requesting council authority to hold 2 bid openings regarding the Community Transportation Enhancement Program. Mr. Sesso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll open the Sidewalks 2 project first. This is a number of sidewalk locations throughout the Butte-Silver area. We have 1 bid. Go ahead.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that does appear to be in order.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the way we did this, in anticipation that the total cost of the project might be more than the dollars we had available, is we had a base bid that covered about 16 locations. 11 locations, and then we had added alternates for the remaining 4 locations, on the pretense that we might need to parse it out a little bit based on the available dollars. So the bid amount.
Who's it from, John?
Oh, excuse me. The bid is received from H&H Contracting here in good old Butte, America, 501 Centennial Avenue, 59701. And it's for a CTEP project, federal aid project, STB 1899, 28. So the base bid for the For the 11 items plus the miscellaneous items of bonding insurance is $447,000 and $1.20. 447,001.2.
Price is right.
So the bid for the first added alternate is $46,000. This $918. 46918. And that's for the East Woolman South Side project by the Stewart Mine. The next one, Clark's Park, Wall Street in Florence, $95,872.25. 95872.25. The third added alternate, A3, 1500 block of Stewart Street, east and west side, is $59,423.75. 59,423.75. And the last added alternate, A4, east side of Continental Drive on the way to Hillcrest, is $44,140. $44,44140 for that. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the one bid for what we call Sidewalks 2 in Butte, Montana.
Is there an engineer?
Do we want to, Mitch, you want to tell us a little bit about how this lines up with your estimate and,
You bet, Mr. Chief Executive. Our total, I'm sorry, Mitch Mihailovich, Project Manager with Pioneer Technical Services. Our total base bid for the 11 bid items and the mold bonding and insurance was $456,610. That's 456,610.00. And then our 4 add alternate bids, we broke out separately. I will give you each of those as John did. Alternate A1 was $46,238. That's 46238.00. Alternate A2 was $101,850. That's 101,850.00. Alternate A3 was $59,981. That's 5998100. And alternate A4 was, our engineer's estimate was for $48,370. That's 48370.00. The combined total for the total base bids plus the alternatives was $713.49. That's 713,049.00.
thank you very much, Mr. Mihailovich.
I would add, Mr. Chairman, that we have about enough for the base bid and in the CTEP grant. And for those of you who are keeping track of the 4 added alternates, in anticipation of not really going to be able to afford it, we proposed the 4 added alternates, 3 of them, 3 out of the 4, in the Transportation Alternatives 2015 proposal, which you announced
We got it.
last week that we had received. So we should be able to get all this work done, if not right away under this bid, but when we get going on the other one, we'll have achieved the goals that we set forth on this set of sidewalk projects,
Exciting.
including the ones that were more in line with the TAP program, or the ones near the East Middle School and Hillcrest and Clark's Park, because they were showing some connectivity to our other children's areas, and the TAP program was sort of a replacement for the Safe Routes to Schools program. So we're in pretty good shape. I'd like to acknowledge Lori for bird dogging the TAP program and getting that proposal in and mixing and meshing the two to achieve our goals.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move that the singular bid that we received be referred back to, I suppose, Planning Department. Would that be correct, John? And to come back to this body with their recommendation after they've reviewed it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so the second one was the the so-called at-grade crossing. This one has a little greater history. If you all recall, the original idea was to build a bridge over Montana Street a little over 6 years ago when we started this project. Some of you were around, and we did our best.
That was Commissioner Henderson's pet project, wasn't it?
Anyway, we did our best to try to get an economical approach. It got pretty expensive because of the necessity to do it well, and the ADA, a lot of big run-ups to make sure it got done. Anyway, long story short, we went back to the drawing board, and we decided that it would be just as prudent and our goal here is to connect the Blacktail Creek and the Civic Center trails on the east side of Montana Street with the Silver Bow Creek Greenway on the west side and running through the LAO area. And for now, our idea is to bring the trail users to the corner of Centennial and Front and Montana Street and create an at-grade crossing at that location, and then extend a sidewalk on the south side of Centennial westerly, so that to a point where you can re-access the Greenway and the LAO trail from the north down into the corridor. So it was a good compromise to try to affect the connections that we were looking for. So this is the project to basically make those improvements.
Okay, very good. Counselor?
Oh, yeah, and again, the one bid we received is also from H&H Contracting, 501 Centennial, Butte, Montana.
Very good.
And Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that does appear to be in order.
Very good.
So seeing us out, this is, right out their back door. They will have a great bid for us to get
The mobilization cost should be low.
Mobilization cost should be low. All right, so this includes, as I said, some asphalt cutting along Centennial, installing a sidewalk for a length of approximately 4,000 feet, and a couple of manholes and some storm drain activity, and corresponding and insurance, and the low mobilization cost. So the bid before us is $97,393. 97,393, and Mitch has got a engineer's estimate. Might as well just
Mr. Mihailovich?
you'll ask about it.
Mr. Chief Executive, our engineer's estimate for the total base bid of these 5 items was $104,619.90. That's 104,619.90.
Very good. All right. Anything on the question here? Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would move to send this singular bid also back to our planning department to come back to this body with their recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Nothing on the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Thank you, Chris and Chris. So backpedaling here now, we will have the presentation, communication number 16-63, Danette Gleason, Finance and Budget Director, requesting the Council of Commissioners authorize a presentation on the audit conducted on the fiscal year 2015 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the CAFR, and the Federal Schedule of Awards. Danette?
Chief Executive Vincent, Council Commissioners, for the record, I'm Danette Gleason, the Finance and Budget Director for Butte-Silver. Tonight, I had passed out to you earlier a small packet. It's not our complete comprehensive annual financial report. As you recall, that's a lot more pages than what's before you. That should be available from the printers next week. It's the whole comprehensive financial report, what we refer to as the CAFR, is available on the Butte-Silver website. And then in our office, if you would like to look at the whole report prior to getting your copy next week. Again, what you have before you is just the basic financial statements. In the basic financial statements, there's what we call management discussion and analysis. It's short for an MD&A. This is just a high-level summary of the financial activity of the local government. I highly encourage you, when you have time, to really read this section of the financial statements. If you can't look at anything else and don't have time to look at a lot of the other components of the CAFR, this gives you the analysis of what happened financially within the local government for fiscal year 15. It contains significant changes from the prior year. It discusses budget to actual variances. It looks at different trends, such as the trend in the net position over a 10-year period of the local government. It includes and discusses the large grants, both capital and operating grants. It looks at the large projects that we have in place, continuing projects as well as ones that have been completed. It looks at changes in our capital assets, and it also looks at some of the economic conditions. So I just really highly recommend that you look at that and do a review. And if you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call. Also, in the basic financial statements, which Pat Burt from Newland & Company will be discussing with you, is our audit opinion on the financial statements and their conformity with GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles, and as well as the GASB, the governmental accounting standards. In the basic financials is the balance sheet, which we call government-wide net position, the government-wide statement of activities, which is your income statement, and then statements relating to our major funds of the local government. This is just a rough summary. I'm not going to go into a lot of the financial analysis because, like I said, a lot of that is in the MD&A. I also believe that, and I would like to offer to the Council of Commissioners and any other department heads or elected officials, a training session on the financial statements. I don't think for some time that we have actually sat down and really went through the financial statements and kind of looked at what does the government-wide statement mean? You know, so the government-wide statement is the net position of the whole government together. That's all your funds, and that's the only time you really see all the governmental and the enterprise funds all combined together. So I think it really is time that we sit down and we look at, and we do a training session or some type of a session just to review what each one of these statements are, because I would take your whole night tonight just discussing some of that information. And I can work with Madam Chair Shaw to try to figure out a date to when we could do that. The other section that's contained that we passed out tonight is the single audit section. It's the schedule of federal awards and the A133 audit. As you recall, last year, Julie Connors joined our staff, and she's responsible for this section of the audit. She does a fantastic job. She's also started in place this year, continuing with the efforts and making sure that we've instituted all the proper internal controls that are necessary, that were mandated starting on July 1 of 15. The single audit section contains other audit opinions, and then again, the audit comments. And I have Pat Burt from Newland & Company, our independent auditor, here tonight that will go into this in more details.
Thank you, Danette. Mr. Burt?
Oh, there.
Mr. Vincent, Commissioners, my name is Pat Burt. I'm with Newland & Company, and we perform your annual audit. Our firm has performed your annual audit for a number of years. Most recently, I've been appearing before the Commission to review the annual report. It was something that we hadn't been doing in prior years, so fairly new to some of you. But what I'd like to start with is our audit opinion, which is in the section that you have in front of you, is essentially the first page. And what that is what we call an unqualified opinion on the financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2015. We designate our responsibility and also management's responsibility. In Butte-Silver's case, you actually prepare the complete CAFR financial statements and we audit them. So the Finance and Budget Department actually prepares a complete set of financial statements with footnotes, and our process is to audit those statements in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. Our opinions on the financial statement are what we call unqualified, which is the best type of opinion you get. We also, not we, but Butte-Silver also submits this report to the GFOA for participation in their program. And this report has extended requirements, and the financial statements have extended requirements to be able to participate in that program. Our opinions on the financial statements say that the financial position of the governmental activities, business type activities, discretely presented component unions, each major fund, the cash flows and respective budgetary comparisons are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Again, this is a clean opinion. The one item that is a little unusual is during the most recent audit period, Butte-Silver adopted a new accounting standard that I'll get to in a minute here, which requires the reporting of net pension liabilities on the financial statements. And for all local governments, this is a pretty significant change to what you usually see on the financial statements. And I'll highlight that in the next couple minutes here. But we're also required to report on supplementary information, which includes a new schedule of proportionate share of net pension liability, and also supplementary statements that are required for basic financial statements. We do not express an opinion on that required supplementary information, but we do perform audit procedures on that. We also report on other schedules within the financial statements, the main one for this report being the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which require additional audit procedures and additional procedures to determine that your grants are accounted for and recorded in compliance with audit standards of local governments. Any questions concerning our opinions? The next, I will skip over the MD&A, which is the what Ms. Gleason referred to, which really kind of details the activities of the statement. And I'm going to page 39, which is the first financial statement after. And that's the statement of net position. And what I will highlight is the new accounting standard that I previously spoke about requires Butte-Silver to report a liability, and it's quite large. It's $22,195,000.64. What that liability represents is the unfunded portion of your pension obligations for governmental employees. It's an unusual liability. It's not a liability that you're able to pay or pre-fund. The funding status is determined by, in your case, the majority is the PERS and certain other unions. They have actuarially determined calculations. The state of Montana actually performed an audit on these numbers and provided all the local governments with the audited numbers to report their share of the net pension liability. But we do show that as an emphasis. And if you're comparing year-to-year financial statements, you'll notice that this liability, you have a $22 million liability, which was not reported in the prior years. And again, that is because of the adoption of a new accounting standard. GASB 68 is the accounting standard. And I do want to highlight that what it creates, unfortunately, is that in prior years, you had positive unrestricted fund balances. And because of the reporting of this liability, it switches you from a positive to a negative. If you look at the very last number on that page, unrestricted, it's actually a negative number. In your governmental activities, you have 15 million negative. And the result of that is the result of reporting this new net pension liability. Any questions, comments?
Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. With that GASB 68 that you were referring to, I know we've dealt with that on a number of boards with Port of Montana. Has there been any change on getting rid of that liability, or is it always going to show on the books? Have they made any moves there?
It will essentially never go away. It's very unusual. It's not a liability that this government can choose to pay early.
Right.
You're not going to be allowed to pay it down. Your rates are determined by the state of Montana. So they will determine the rates. They will determine how much you pay you will pay them. This liability will continue on. So it's not a liability that you can budget for or ever pay. It is an unusual item, definitely.
Follow up, Commissioner.
Does it have a negative thing on our rating or percentages that we pay?
As far as your bond rating goes?
Yeah.
I don't believe so, but it's very new, okay? And so I believe you're looking at a refunding bond right now.
Right.
Jeanette, do you have some knowledge on that, I assume?
Chief Executive Vincent, Commissioner Morgan, we spoke briefly about this with our bond council probably back in October. I know we went into a class at the League of Cities discussing it into more detail about what is it going to look like to us. Their impression was at that time that if a thorough explanation will not, and we accompany that in all of our statements and our financial statements. When you get the whole statement, you're going to see that it's much larger than it's ever been, because we have at least 40 pages in our notes of our financial statements just explaining this liability. And so with those explanations, with bond counsel's articulation of it all, and then we're hoping that when we go to underwriters and whatnot, that it will not impact. What I've read from the GFOA and from other sources, they're not seeing the impact as long as it's fully explained. We're hoping.
just because a $22 million liability is a huge number to be looking at for bond counsel. So
Right.
as long as they let us try to justify it and make
Well,
sure
I
they
can't
understand.
imagine that we're in any unique situation as compared to other local governments.
No, that's very true.
Right.
All the local governments in Montana, actually the state of Montana provided this information to every local government, all the way down to school districts, small cities, towns. Everyone is reporting liabilities, pretty much proportionately. If you look at, as you stated, the Port of Montana has something very similar, which is the discretely presented component unit.
So all local governments across the whole country and all nonprofits and all states are required to report this. So it's affecting everybody.
We're getting graded on the curve. Commissioner Shaw?
So my understanding is it can't be paid down. It's just simply a line item. We need to be aware of what it means so that we don't have some angst over the fact that we got a huge deficit.
Exactly. The hope is from an accounting standpoint that the PERSs and those organizations will pay attention to those numbers and develop funding mechanisms to adjust that liability in the future.
Okay, thanks, Pat.
Any other questions? Next time, I am going to skip over the rest of the financial information unless you have specific questions on that, and go to what we call the single audit section, which is headed single audit section. What that section is the schedule of federal financial assistance. And then also we prepare two separate compliance reports based upon our audit procedures on that section. The first section is a report on internal control on financial reporting compliance based on our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. And this is government auditing compliance. And the next report is a report that is specifically related to our audits of internal controls in accordance with OMB Circular A133, which is the federal grant portion of audits. The reports are very similar, and they both list items which we consider to be significant deficiencies in internal accounting control. And I am on page 273 and 274 of your handout. And we list those findings, and I will review those when I'm done here, as findings 15.1, 15.2, and 15.3, is we consider those to be significant deficiencies in internal control, which is something less than a material weakness. And we do have a definition as significant deficiency is a deficiency that is less severe yet important enough to merit attention with those charged with government. So it's something that we as auditors are required to bring to your attention, and then also quantify whether it's a material weakness, a significant deficiency, are just what we consider other compliance matters. And I will go right to the auditor's comments section. As long as there's no questions on my two reports. The reports are very similar. They list the same thing. They are unqualified opinions on compliance with OMB Circular A133 and also on compliance with government auditing standards. We're just pointing out areas of improvement for internal controls, essentially. First item I'll start with is item number 15-1, and that is on page 281 of your handout, if you're looking at that. This is a repeat comment. This comment has been in our audit report for a number of years. It relates to internal controls in offices outside the treasurer's. What we do is list the offices that are a part of our review have inadequate segregation of duties. And in these offices, that essentially would require additional employees to totally segregate your record-keeping function and your cash collection function. And we concentrate on outside offices where you have cash collection. Again, this is not a new item. This is a repeat comment on a number of these. We recommend that Butte-Silver investigate the feasibility of improving internal controls over cash collections at outside offices. Butte-Silver may be able to utilize the services of the county audit to assist in segregation of duties. And management has listed the response there, which is listed in your reports. If there's no questions, I'll just continue on to the next item.
Sure.
This is a partial repeat item. We had this in our last year's audit also, which is internal control over payroll. We noted that the law enforcement agency and the Metro Sewer Department employee timesheets lack proper signature and approval. In addition, we noted that the Justice Peace submits the approved biweekly timesheets prior to the end of the payroll reporting period. Part of our procedures obviously also include looking at expenditures, but we also look at payroll every year and select a payroll sample. So we look at government employees' payrolls every year for compliance with requirements, compliance with written guidelines to ensure that everything is properly approved and organized. We recommend that Butte-Silver implement proper payroll procedures, review and approval, and that all timesheets be signed verifying actual hours. And management has responded that they have a personnel policy to begin implementing that procedure. I will note that last year there was a little more related to the services of the payroll supervisor, and they did improve that function and segregate the duties and institute an approval process for the payroll supervisors. So that is a slight change from the prior year audit. The next item, 15-3, is a new item. This wasn't part of our prior year's audit. During our audit, we noted errors related to depreciation calculation on fixed assets. The current depreciation was incorrectly calculated on asset and added to the depreciation schedule in the prior year. The error resulted in the asset recording full depreciation in 1 year. And as a result of this, we presented this to management and they prepared a prior period adjustment to the financial statements in the amount of $621,180. So the error has been corrected in the fixed assets. We recommend Butte-Silver develop procedures to renew all new fixed asset additions for proper recording and calculation. And management has responded. This was actually an unusual situation for an asset that was transferred from a work in process account. So it wasn't a normal asset. No, the normal policy is assets are capitalized based on invoices and looked at period. So it was a little bit of an unusual situation during that. Any questions, comments? Those three items are what we considered to be significant deficiencies in their internal controls. We also had other findings that we list as other matters. As part of our audit engagement, we also test for compliance with government compliance requirements. And as part of our examination on the compliance, this is also a repeat comment. The public administrator is not posted an annual report in the office of the clerk of the district court In addition, the balance in the public administrator cash account is $74,164. This amount represents the balances in individual estate accounts which have not been distributed. The criteria, of course, is that the public administrator prepare an annual report that details the activity of these accounts and also what the ultimate disposition of these accounts is. That report is required annual. It has not been filed for a number of years. This is a repeat comment that goes back a number of years. And of course, our recommendation is the public administrator should post an annual report in the office of the clerk of the district court in compliance with section 72-15-207. The public administrator should also review the individual estate accounts and distribute the funds in compliance with that same code section. And management agrees and appears that did not file the report. Automated systems were developed in complying this, and the Finance and Budget Department will continue to work with the county's attorney's office, district court judges, and public administrator to resolve the issue. Any questions?
Commissioner Perdue-Dolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Mr. Burt, with regard to this, I have a question. How can this go on for so many years? What is the check and balance? Who oversees this public administrator with this amount of money for it not to be held accountable for not only this amount of money, but these families?
Well, actually, this account is an account of Butte-Silver Bow. So
Okay.
the money is held by Butte-Silver Bow. The pit, this in particular, the 74,000 is held by Butte-Silver Bow. And this is an elected position, and I'm not sure of it.
I guess I'm confused,
Yeah.
Danette. I'm just, who's the
So,
oversight
right.
on this?
Chief Executive Vincent,
Jeanette.
Commissioner Perdue-Dolan. I just want to step back as far as like the accounting portion of it. We know which estate is due what money. So our office's responsibility is to keep a listing. We know where the 74,000 is supposed to go. We know what estates that is assigned to, just from our accounting records and through the treasurer's office. The treasurer's office, by statute, is the collector of all of our cash and then the disperser of this cash. We met with the public administrator, the county attorney, and myself last year after the finding. My first year back, we found the finding. We developed some electronic means that were initiated to try to assist the public administrator with the process. I also met with the judges to try to work out something to assist the public administrator with trying to make sure that the reports first were being filed up at the district court. And I can state that the annual report was not filed, but I do know throughout the year at different intervals in time, the public administrator did file some of those reports throughout the year. As far as these funds that we have on the books right now, these are funds that have been carried over between probably 2, maybe even 3 different public administrators. So we're actually going to have to work with the judge because we can't just, in a normal course of business, if somebody doesn't cash their check or their warrant, what we call them with local governments, we hold it for a year and then we transfer the money to the state of Montana as abandoned property. And somebody in my office takes care of that. But in this particular case, the judge has to look through it to make sure that the cases were properly closed, and Eileen can add to what that exact term is. I'm not positive, but the judge has to make sure that it's closed out properly before we can administer the funds and then send them back to the state of Montana as abandoned. So we're in that process right now. And like I said, it's kind of crossed over between a couple different public administrators, some of these funds. And so working with the judge, trying to work through the process. We hope to have it done by the end of next year, but like Pat alluded to a little bit, this is an elected office. And so my office does not have control, neither does the county attorney have control over trying to get this worked out. And we don't have the authority just to go do it ourselves.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Dinette, this may be a question for you. I know the public administrator is an elected position, but it's not a paid position. It's my understanding that the public administrator is paid a portion of these fees to administer these estates. Has any of these public administrators been paid any portion of the $74,164, or is that money still there till the estates are dispersed, or has the public administrator already collected fees for these cases for the work they've already done? I know I'm a little confusing, but I think you follow what I'm saying.
Chief Executive Vincent, Commissioner Fisher, throughout the process, when a public administrator is working on it, they're entitled to funds. So within the 74,000, I can't say exactly which estates had been paid or paid out to some of their services, but they're paid throughout the process. So not total and final payment, correct? Am I correct, County Attorney? So they are paid throughout the whole process. If there is a payment, it's not necessarily a cash payment to the public administrator, but the public administrator gets full health insurance.
Commissioner Fisher, follow up.
Thank you, Dinette. That answers a good share of my question. Now, does the public administrator have any final payment or percentage upon when the estate is dispersed? I think, if I'm not mistaken, that if there's, say, 6 cases, after each one is dispersed, I believe the public administrator gets a portion of the disbursement for the final payment for the work they've done. They might have been paid all along, but I think they get a final piece of the action at the end, do they not?
Chief Executive Vincent, Commissioner Fisher, I'll have to have the county attorney's assistance with this as well, but they get a percentage based on what I've seen with the other cases, or what the judge indicates as what their allotment is for the services that they're providing throughout the administration of it. You know, some people come in and the state's only a couple $1,000s, where others come in and it's $10,000 or $15,000. So I think it's just a prorated percentage, and they get it throughout the case, throughout the estate, the probate.
Thank you. And clarification, I believe the public administrator is appointed because there usually is no heirs to the estate. Is that correct? Usually that's why the public administrator is involved, because there is no heirs to the estate. So most of the money would be going to, quote unquote, mostly unknowns.
County Attorney.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Fisher, a public administrator is supposed to administer any estate that you can't find any heirs. So a lot of the funds go to pay just, a lot of times there isn't a lot of money. It's just a matter of being able to pay for funeral expenses and things like that. But in the end, then it would sheet to the state if there was no one else to give the money to. And their fees are statutorily based. So the court orders the fees based upon the value of the estate.
Okay. Commissioner Ralph.
Thank you. As has been mentioned before, the public administrator is a elected office, and if we have any volunteers out there to unwind this mess, no one has filed yet for the position.
Duly noted. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Eileen, you might be able to answer this, but this to me is a pretty serious thing that they haven't been filed for multiple years. What's the impeachment process or the removal of office for this person?
County Attorney.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Morgan, there's a recall act in the state law that you have to gather a certain percentage of electors' signatures in order to recall somebody from public office. But there's a specific statutory scheme set up that's called the Montana Recall
So
Act.
you'd have to go through that process to do it.
Okay. No further questions. I guess
Further
we'll
questions?
let you proceed, Pat.
Okay, next item is item 15-5, detention center. During our audit, we visit various small offices to review internal controls, review the cash collection points. That's part of what I alluded to in the initial. During our examination of detention center inmate fund balances. We found that the balances were not reconciled to the city and county's general ledger on a periodic basis by the Finance and Budget Department. Also during the examination, we found that the detention center had outstanding checks dating back as far back as April 2007. And we recommend that the detention center implement internal control procedures providing for a monthly reconciliations of funds between the Swiss software system, which is the system utilized by the detention center, and the city and county general funds. This reconciliation should be completed by personnel independent from collection of those funds. We also recommend that management review the detention center outstanding checklist and delete those checks outstanding longer than 1 year. To give you a little more insight, what this fund is what they call the inmates canteen account. And there's cash in there. They use it to buy various items, and then when they are released, the cash is distributed to them. And unfortunately, what these checks date back to is a bunch of really small checks, 15 cents, 50 cents, $2. So it's just more of a bookkeeping item to delete those off your books just so that you don't have to account for them. And again, a standard internal control is if you do have a patient accounts, there should be a subsidiary record that equals the cash that you have in the account. So,
Very good.
any questions, comments? Next item is item 15-6, Civic Center. While testing the county's reconciliations of funds between the general ledger and the bank statements, we found that the Civic Center had a bank account with $70,982 that was not entered in the general ledger. Strong internal control requires all county cash funds be recorded in the general ledger. We recommend that Butte-Silver County Finance and Budget Office establish internal controls reviewing all cash funds on a monthly basis, listed within the general ledger to all bank statements received by the county. We also recommend that the city and county establish a financial statement showing monthly activity of the Civic Center, allowing for the implementation of stronger internal controls to help mitigate against potential fraud and errors. This account is not a new account. It's been in existence a long time. But previously it was treated more of it as an in and out. There is always a very small balance. Events would be at this account would be utilized for events at the Civic Center, and then the monies would be deposited back to the county treasurer.
Questions? Commissioner Purdue-Dolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Danette, I just have a question as to why this is such a large bank account. And I know that we have such a great number of events, and I'm guessing that's probably why that's a high figure. But is that why? And maybe that can be rectified, or am I guessing correctly? You can answer that for me.
Yep. Chief Executive Vincent, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, you're exactly right. It should be an account out there like this. So we have, again, the Treasurer's Office is the main remittance area of the local government by statute for all cash receiving. And what was happening here is the Treasurer's Office had this bank statement out there, not bringing it to our attention that it wasn't on our cash reconciliation sheet that my office takes into account and does all the accounting and activity for. We are already actively working on rectifying this issue. Again, I get to point to Julie Connors. She's handling this with Wendy McGrath in my office and working with Bill and Crystal down at the Civic Center. We are all in agreement that it's not proper to be handling it this way. Every month, it'll be ran similar to how we run our golf course account. The golf course has an account outside of our main treasurer's office as well, and they will be doing monthly reporting activity to us. We hope Julie and Wendy are very close, working with Crystal to have the reporting and everything done by the close of our February business, which would be by March 15th. So we're actively getting that done right now. Again, like Pat had indicated this is what they called their box office account. So when events are held, and there is large monies deposited into this account with the events. So when events are held that night, the people want their money. And so we're not up here at the courthouse working at 10 or 11, 12 o'clock at night. So what happens is that there's this account out there. It's ran by the Civic Center board, and I think Bill's here. I'll let Bill jump in a little bit here too to explain it in more detail. But the Civic Center board does the authorization of the checks out of this. They see every check that's wrote, and they sign off on every single one of the checks that are wrote. So it's not just Bill looking at it or signing checks or Crystal. There's also the board chair, I believe, is the signatory on the account, or any of the board signatures on your account.
Bill, you want to chime in?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, for the record, I'm Bill Melvin, manager of the Civic Center. I reside at 911 Montrose. Yeah, Danette, all of the board members have signing authorization on our checking account. We also take the checkbook up and have them review it at our monthly meetings so they can see where all the money's going. I do appreciate Danette's clarification of the statement. We were not getting our statement, and therefore we could not balance our checkbook because there's arbitrary money that comes in, like for convenience fees, etc. The good news is we're in the positive, and some of those funds are also due to us doing our own promoting now. We, as of last year, just started doing our own promoting. So the rodeo's ours, the winter bazaar's ours, and also the wedding fair, and then we started doing concerts as well. So some of that money's just a coding problem that Julie is going to help us with, and we'll be able to balance our checkbook every month. I don't know if anybody else does it. My mom can do it to the penny, and she's 94, but I haven't balanced my checking account in a long time. Anyhow, I do it online, but that's what the situation is. Danette's been a big help to us, and that is our fault for not staying on top of it, but we do have people here that can help us through it. So thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Okay, the final item is an item we also comment on, which is prior report recommendations. And what this is a comparison of the report, the audit comments that we made last year. And this is overall very positive. If you look, we segregate this report into three columns: implemented or corrected, partially implemented, and not implemented. And of the 9 comments we had last year, only 2 were not implemented, and those being the internal controls at offices outside the treasurer and also the public administrator issue. We had a total of 6 that were at 6 comments from the prior year that were implemented, and 1 comment from the prior year that was partially implemented. So,
very good.
Any questions?
Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. On the not implemented on number 1, is that every office, or do we have like specific identified offices, meaning elected officials or just general?
The offices are identified in finding 15-1.
Thank you.
So those are the offices. It's Parking Commission, City Court, Civic Center, County Attorney, Parks and Recreation, Transit, Health, Landfill, and Sheriff.
Commissioner Henderson.
Mr. Chief Executive, Pat, could you tell me, do you feel comfortable in your analysis of all the financials and everything that we are being covered and checked in each department and checked by other sources other than just the internal, so that we're, how do I put it? So we're kind of safe from any kind of wrongdoing that could happen? And I'm not suggesting that at all, that there is wrongdoing. I'm just saying, is every department in the financial area that you cover, is it all protected by other auditing internally?
You know, one of the key components of that is segregation of duties between the cash collection process and the other. So for the majority of your departments, you actually have a method where almost all the cash is deposited at the treasurer. There is adequate segregation of duties there. The areas where you don't have that, and where we can't say for sure, is the areas listed in items 15-1. Because of your lack of personnel, you don't have what we would call an extremely good internal control system, that errors could occur just because of lack of peak personnel in your office. So, in terms of, are you covered? Those are the areas in items 15-1 that there's potential. And I think for some of the commissioners, there have been issues in the past where monies have been missing. Okay. There is no perfect system. For the most part, Butte-Silver Bow complies with and has developed and instituted internal controls that, for the most part, are in my view, very adequate. What we use in the accounting profession is a term we call tone at the top, which is how management addresses these issues and how seriously they take these comments, and that includes department heads, various offices, the treasurer's office. And we view that as a risk criteria. And in our instance, we view the tone at the top as very good. Management is aware of these and pays attention to them. I don't believe there is a perfect system. In your case, you're probably always going to have 15-1 comments, where you're going to have these small offices where you don't have the perfect system. And it's more of a cost-benefit analysis.
Follow up, Mr. Chief Executive. Well, that's, I realize there's no perfect system. It's just being as protected the best we can, whatever it takes to, because it happens all over the country, and we've seen it in the paper, even nearby local cities and other things where this can happen. And I just, it was sort of like Mr. Melvin explained, that the board checks the things, and we check in finance and budget, and Danette gives us the bills that are paid, and we go through them, and everybody has questions and this and that, and she does real well answering it. And I know everybody's, putting in full time trying to make sure everything works right, but there's always them cracks, and that's what I worry about, that we don't have that exposure.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it becomes a cost-benefit issue. Is in order to implement that type of system, in a real simple term, instead of maybe 1 or 2 employees at these offices, you'd be required to hire 3 or 4. And does the revenue generated in these small offices justify that? And that's a management decision, not anything that I can decide for you. I probably could design the almost perfect system, but it would be costly.
It'd be costly.
Yeah, and almost meaning that controls can always be overridden. You can create all these controls, and if there's collusion between 2 employees, controls can always be overridden. So there is no perfect system, and that's why you see it in the paper all the time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Thanks, Ben.
Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I just want to thank Danette and her team, because it's a lot nicer looking at this form on page 285 and seeing more check boxes on implemented and corrected than there has been in the past. So thank you and your team for doing what you did.
And I think, this is a good opportunity. I know Danette's she's offered to give a training or an orientation on how to go through this all. But in addition to all of these things, I know Pat and his team show up here in force in June, And they're here. I mean, when a lot of us are at home laying on the couch watching holiday football games and having drinks with friends, these guys are up here into the wee hours of the morning getting this comprehensive annual financial report ready to send off to where it has to go in order for us to meet our requirements. And so these guys really do take this seriously, and they go above and beyond, and that includes Danette and her staff, because it's not an easy job. And I mean, I guess I would call on Danette if she wants to even add additional details to that. But
Sure.
Thank you, guys.
I got one.
Well, you got another question, Denny?
Mr. Chief Executive, Pat, the one thing I do see that you had the recommendation, and I haven't had a chance to study this new one totally. And by the way, thank you. And it's quite detailed, and it'll take a lot of homework. So, especially for old people. But I did want to say, Pat, where you had a recommendation here that I happened to see was Butte-Silver Bowl may be able to utilize the services of the county auditor to assist in segregation of duties. Could you dwell into that a little bit?
Yeah, in certain instances, that would be an ideal segregation of duties, because you have someone not involved in the cash collection, maybe reviewing, as Bill alluded to, maybe reviewing deposits, reviewing checks, that type of thing. That's a normal duty of an auditor, okay, and of an internal auditor, is to set up and create those types of checks and balances. Very reasonable to have that in an auditor position. So.
And at the present time, we don't have it, right?
At the present time, because of past history, the auditor's duties have been essentially very limited, in any duties that I shouldn't say any, but majority of the duties are being handled by the finance and budget.
Follow-up?
Well, kind of for you, Mr. Chief Executive, could you explain, well, I guess you can't tell an auditor what to do because that's an elected official. But how did somebody take the duties away from an elected official? I guess I'm kind of lost.
It was done by the electorate.
Pardon?
It was done by the electorate. There was a county attorney. Would you like to answer that one?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Henderson, there is an ability for a local government to be able to decide what duties you can assign, and we have by ordinance, and we have passed a ordinance in Butte-Silver Bowl called the Finance and Budget System, I think, that in that ordinance, we took a lot of the duties that by state law were given to an auditor and assigned them to our Finance and Budget Department. And the reason I think that was done is because there aren't any specific requirements to become the auditor. But when we hire people to work in the Finance and Budget Office, we have job descriptions that require them to have the knowledge to be able to know how to deal with the financial systems, like Ms. Gleason's and her staff's knowledge.
Sure, follow up.
Mr. Chief Executive, then why would we have an auditor position if, number one, there's no qualifications to audit anything, number two, don't have a job to audit anything? What is the purpose of that position?
And Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Henderson, that I think is what the Chief Executive was starting to allude to a few study commissions ago. They did ask the voters to vote on eliminating that position, and that failed.
So, Danette, you have something
Yeah.
you can add.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Henderson, just to add a little bit to it, you have to realize back in the day when some of this was happening, the GASB pronouncements, our financial statements were probably 30 pages long, Pat, 40 pages long maybe.
Yeah, much smaller.
There wasn't all these GASB pronouncements out there. Today we're at GASB 78. or something like that.
Something in the 70s.
Yeah, something in the 70s. Back then, well, I know in 2003 or 2002 or something, we were at GASB 34. So over time, I see the auditor position key to this local government as it relates to our internal control structure. I see that the need, my department is sitting there doing all the financial reporting, all the financial accounting. They could assist us by making sure that every department, and we might be able to eliminate some of those items on 15-1, every department has documented procedures related to their cash collections. Everything's documented. So you could walk into anybody's office and sit down at the desk and do their job. You could sit there and do those accounting activities related to cash collection. So those type of items are very much needed for good quality internal control structures in a local government. And I think if you walked into many of the offices today, they don't have documented internal control. Everybody kind of knows how the processes work, and we know the structure's there. We know that the treasurer's office is the main cash collection point, and we know how that all works out there, and we know that Mike Sullivan in the treasurer's office collects the cash, and Wendy McGrath in my office does all the bank reconciliations for that segregation of duties. But we don't have a lot of good documentation around our internal controls. And similar with our grants, Julie's already started the process on our internal control structure around all of our federal grants. And you just really need those good quality documented internal control structures. And then the auditor could assist with establishing even more internal control that, they can make recommendations on improvements. There's always room for improvement. And like I said, as we move and we get more stringent on our reporting requirements and more GASB pronouncements are issued, we're going to have more of that requirement out there. I just kind of want to touch really quick on 15-1. I don't want to beat this to death, but Pat's job and the independent auditor's job is to be as safe as possible. So if they see any weaknesses or any potential, if it's $5 or $500,000, they have to do that audit comment out there. So if you were to go to the county attorney's office who's on that list, they have a small restitution account. We would have to hire one person to collect that restitution account, and that's all they would do all day long. And in the county attorney's office, I think they might issue maybe 10, this is probably high, but 5 to 10 checks a month. So there's not somebody coming in. It's not like the water company and there's people walking in the door all the time in and out making cash payments. So it's not feasible for the local government to hire 10 or plus new positions just to sit there and take a cash collection to meet an internal control comment. We have to look at the cost effectiveness of hiring those positions. And so that's why we haven't done it. In some cases, we removed the fire department this year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Out of that. So when we can, if we see an opportunity, and this is where an auditor might be able to add some more additional to it, the process would be, we remove the fire department's ability to collect any cash. So they were collecting small fire permit fees. Well, we said it's not worth that to have a comment on our internal controls. So now they go to the treasurer's office or they do it all online. So we're trying to address each one of them, but right now there's just a lot of departments that it's just not going to be feasible to hire a clerical staff at $50,000, $60,000 a year with benefits and try to just monitor just sitting there all day collecting cash. So I think we're focusing a lot and emphasis on an issue that may not really be there. I mean, we all worry about that, and in a perfect world, we would have all these people hired and all this in place, but all we can do is develop the internal controls that in Eileen's office, we have one person that mainly works on it, but she has to go to lunch. So when she goes to lunch, we don't want to hire somebody new to come in to meet the perfect control. We'd have to hire somebody new to sit there and not do anything else. And all they could do is collect cash. And then that person go home from lunch and then Lori come back in for the day and finish the job. It's just not feasible in all cases to do that.
Mr. Chief Executive, follow up.
Commissioner Henderson.
I'm sorry, I'm totally confused because I don't know what an auditor does. And I see this recommendation and it really makes sense. That person should be auditing different departments and so on and so forth for Silver Bow County, or at least assisting in the ones that are too busy or where we don't have to hire somebody, like you say, for just that part-time stuff. And that should be the auditors, but also that there's no qualification per se, as far as auditing for the auditor job. And if you did have somebody really qualified, he doesn't have the job to do anything in his qualifications. So I'm really confused on that, and why the the committee didn't see that was a $70,000 job that could have been eliminated and maybe added to the finance and budget department or something like that, where it could have assisted her. But I'm really confused on that. So.
Eileen can answer.
Okay, Eileen. Do you wanna-
Chief Executive Vincent, Commissioner Anderson, the study commission did make that recommendation to eliminate the position, I think along with the assessor and the superintendent of schools, but it goes to a vote of the people, and the people voted not to eliminate that position. That's why it still remains.
Follow up, I take it back then. No, I still think it could be a position that's not being utilized good enough for what it's being paid. Thank you.
Commissioner Ralph, you care to comment on this?
Well, I kind of have a conflict of interest here because I am running for auditor. But I do agree, there are tasks that the auditor is not currently doing within the framework of the charter and the state legislation. I believe that a lot of these duties can very easily be moved back into the auditor's office.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Purdue-Dolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Pat, can I ask you a question? Of course, we haven't had time to look at this whole document, but did you focus or comment on and this may allude to what may add on to what an auditor could help with, is the question of budget transfers. And this was something that we talked about with the Finance and Budget office, or not office, Finance and Budget Committee, and something that many of the committee members didn't want to take on. And is that something you thought about or discussed in the document at all?
As it
As an
relates to,
oversight
as an oversight for which department?
for departments in general, for each department, and what they do in transferring money and using that money and moving it and clarifying why they do it, and then showing the legislative branch why they move the money and the reasons for it. Are you concerned about that process, I guess is my question.
Actually, that is part of our audit. Each year we do look at the budgets and budget transfers, and we look at authorization and whether they are authorized and have the proper documentation. We do not look at, is it properly designed, or does this group require maybe an additional approval process? We look at compliance with the requirements currently in place for budget transfers, and are those requirements being properly implemented? We don't look at certain instances, but we don't look at areas to improve all the time. Certain instances we do, certain we don't.
Thank you.
Okay. No further questions. Danette, do you want to conclude with anything?
Yes, please. First of all, thank you. It takes a whole team to get this CAFR out. It takes the work of the auditors, it takes the work of my staff, but it also takes the work of all the departments across Butte-Silver Bow, because we're daily doing this. I know a lot of what you see from my department all relates to budget. So you don't really necessarily see all the accounting activity and all the work that we do on the accounting side as a whole government. Every department puts into it. We have what we call a large accounting team that we have meetings with. We plan on having more meetings with more often throughout the years that are throughout the year that are within all the different departments. So everybody's going together to make this happen. The finance and budget, I talked a little bit to Matt about it. We really start our year-end activity in June, right when we're trying to do the budgets as well. So we have fixed assets going on. We have everything happening at one time and trying to juggle between if I'm working on year-end activities or we're working on budgets. So there's a lot going on in the county across all departments as well as mine. And like Matt had mentioned, we can't say enough thanks to my staff who puts in a lot of weekends, a lot of holidays, and as well as the auditors who spend a lot of weekends and late nights with us trying to make sure that we meet our December 31st deadline and get it out, including sometimes Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and New Year's. We spend a lot of time together that time of year. So anyways, and with your support too, getting all the work done, and then like last year, adding the part-time staff of allowing us to add Julie into the department and really start to focus on the grants and that A133 section of the audit. So thank you.
Very good. Thanks again, Pat. Thanks again, Danette.
I'd just like to add, Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioners, with your point, Commissioner Dolan, is my office is, especially me, is always available. If you do have questions or comments or concerns concerning a particular procedure or item, I would be glad to talk to you and discuss that with you at any time during the year also. So,
Commissioner Henderson.
Mr. Chief Executive, I would like to say I think that was a great job by Danette and Pat in doing this. And also, we had 8 recommendations and 6 of them were taken care of. I'm really impressed with that because it was a lot of years forthcoming to that. So I appreciate that, and we'll work on the other 2. And thank you for the good job.
Very good. We appreciate the extra time you put into presenting this to the public and the governing body. I know, as you mentioned earlier, this is something fairly new coming up here and giving this report. And I think it's worthwhile because this is something that goes on every day, day in, day out. And we to focus on it once a year and really kind of identify these areas where we need to do better, where we have done better, where we will be doing better moving ahead. It's valuable for all of us. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Moving to the public hearing, communication number 16-65, Julie Connors with the Butte-Silver Finance and Budget Department, requesting Council of Commissioners schedule a public hearing for March 2nd for the purpose of amending the fiscal year 2015-16 budget to allow for increased expenditures of unanticipated revenue. We've already confirmed that we had proper publication on this. So, Ms. Connors? Oh, excuse me, Ms. Gleason. I just saw Julie in the audience. So
we're training tonight. Chief Executive Vincent, Council Commissioners, for the record, I'm Jeanette Gleason, the Finance and Budget Director. With me tonight is Todd Hoare, who also worked a lot on this grant along with Karen Sullivan, the Health Department Director. They were very successful in receiving a $22,800 grant that covers a period of 18 months. This fiscal year, we're asking, and during this public hearing, to budget $13,300. This is Reaching People with Disabilities for Healthy Communities grant. And if Todd wants to come up and talk just a little bit about the grant and the great opportunity that this grant will afford our community.
Thanks, Danette. Todd?
Chief Executive, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to talk. This grant is designed to help us assess the inclusiveness of people with disabilities in our community when we're developing projects like we've heard tonight on the opening of the bids for sidewalks, any of the construction we might do on the Park Street project, building schools, building new parks. So the idea behind it is one of the universities in Alabama has an institute called NCPAD, National Center for Healthy Activity and Disability. And the idea behind it is to figure out a way to assess a community in a snapshot, come up with the deficits that continue to occur, and then help make some improvements to the planning of those events so that we're getting it right every single time we do it. So the grant funds are I would say about 6 to 8 months, January through, just probably July, August, we'll be doing a lot of the assessment work. We're going to assess some of our schools, work sites, healthcare, community organizations, and look at the healthy aspect to them. Can you get into them? If you can get into them, is there healthy aspects to them? Are we, nutritional food? And is it accessible to people with disabilities? So are we putting one flyer out about a healthy living program, but people who may be sight impaired can't read what the event is about? So in essence, we're excluding them instead of including them. So it's that kind of assessment, working right with the different agencies and groups within Butte-Silver Bow, helping them identify what the deficits are so that when they have projects, not just governmental projects, that they will move forward with inclusion. So over the next 6 to 8 months, we'll do the assessment work, and then the remainder of the 18 months, we'll be working on implementation strategies to where we can give all these different groups kind of a set of guidelines on how to implement it on everything they do. In it is, there's about $2,500 of that is travel funds. Karen and I will represent Butte. And I guess to say, it was pretty competitive, and only 5 communities in the United States got the funds, 2 in Montana, Helen and Butte. And so we'll travel to Birmingham, Alabama in a couple of weeks, as long as you guys receive these funds. And then we'll go over fine-tuning how to do this assessment work and teach people to do the assessment work within those organizations, and then how to properly implement on a consistent basis. So that's kind of the synopsis of the 22-8. Our lead, I guess our lead, so you know that too, is out of the University of Montana. Dr. Meg Tracy runs the Rural Institute on Disability, so she's our state expert. Karen is our health expert, and by default, I'm the disability expert.
Very good. This is a good opportunity. Are there any questions for Mr. Hoare? Okay. Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
At this point, I would open the public hearing. Are there any proponents of the unanticipated revenue? Any proponents to receiving these grant funds? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Is there anyone opposed to us receiving these funds? Last call for either. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Moving into section 2, consent agenda. Are there any segregations or amendments? Commissioner Perdue-Dolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I'd like to segregate section 2A2, section 4, resolution 16-8.
2A2. You have a page number on that, Commissioner Perdue-Dolan?
Page 13.
Okay. Okay, gotcha.
Thank you.
Any others? Okay, seeing none, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve Section 2 consent agenda A 1 through 6, with the exception of the Judiciary Committee meeting report, Section 4, Resolution 16-8, and Section B, Item 1, and Section C, Item 1 through 18.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there anything further on the question? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Section 2 from the Judiciary Reports, Resolution 16-8. Commissioner Purdue-Dola.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Last week at the Judiciary Committee, we were talking about resolution number 16-8, and it was the resolution about the pool and just the language about getting the pool on the ballot. And Public Works Director Dave Schultz wanted to hold this in the Judiciary Committee for a couple weeks because he had a plan to possibly lower the cost of the $8.7 million. And I just had a question. I wanted to find out a little bit more about the possible plan and the lowering of the cost and what that entailed.
Mr. Schultz?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, we are hoping to lower the amount of the bond issue. We maybe can lower the cost as well, but we're trying to zero in on what the dollar figure should be that you folks include in the resolution to authorize the bond issue.
Is the cost of the $8.7 million, is that going to lower the cost in terms of changing the design of the pool, taking away some of the elements, any specifics in that regard?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, there is no intent at this point to change the design that was presented to the council.
Follow-up?
Do you have any, is there anyone in mind to support the project and to give money and add their name to the pool in that regard, so we don't have to change anything or take away anything from the project?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, I know of no one who has asked to add their name to the pool, so there's nothing I have that I can offer in that regard.
So how will we be able to lower the cost then? I don't.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, the intent isn't to lower the cost. The intent is to see if there's some way to lower the amount of the bond issue. And I am not privy to all that's going on in that regard. I think there's probably some helpful things that are occurring, but they're not things I'm able to report on to you tonight.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Dave, one quick question. Are we still planning on having this on the June ballot? I read in the newspaper, I think, that there was some talk of moving it to the November ballot. Is that something that's in the works, or are we still planning on a June vote?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Fisher, the full intent is to have this on the June ballot. If we're able to have the judiciary amend this, if amendment is needed, and vote it out on the 9th, then you folks on the 16th, hopefully, will pass the resolution, and it will make the deadline of the 18th to give to the printer to be on the ballot for June. So everything is on track to have it ready for June.
Very good.
Thank you, Dave. I sure hope it makes the June ballot. I would hate to see it drag out to November. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I was just going to make a motion that we hold in Judiciary Committee until the next committee of the whole meeting on March 9th, 2016.
Okay, Okay, we have a motion and a second. Nothing further on the question? Commissioner Purdue-Dolan?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I just wanted to make one more comment. I did have a couple questions in the Judiciary Committee with regard to, and this goes back to Commissioner Morgan's initial question with the language of the way it's worded as the ballot question, the end words, bonds yes, bonds no, the fact that the taxpayers are going to be asked to be voting on the $8.7 million bond and approving the $350,000 levy, and that is a tax. I will be questioning whether that is clarification enough and to make sure we're clear enough because it's going to be a very long primary ballot, and it is a presidential year, and that ballot will be long. And I just want to make sure we are giving the most accurate information, and that bonds yes, bonds no. I hope we give each taxpayer the most information that we can and the most clarified information we can. So thank you.
Thank you. On the question, Commissioner Ralph?
Again, I have to say, this is the most transparent bond issue we have ever done. And to continue to beat on people for not being transparent enough when they have gone above and beyond. This $350,000 that we're talking about has never been disclosed, to my knowledge, in Butte-Silver before as a continuing expense. And I say kudos to Butte-Silver for putting this out in the open. Thank you.
We will continue to work with all of the commissioners in answering questions so that we indeed can provide the best picture of information for folks. Commissioner Shaw, then Commissioner Purdue-Dolan.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Executive Benson. John, would you mind repeating your motion? I want to make sure I understood it. Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. It was just the same recommendation motion that was in there. So hold in Judiciary Committee until the next committee of the whole meeting on March 9th, 2016.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I thought you were
Same recommendation.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Purdue-Dolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, and thank you, Commissioner Morgan. And just to clarify for Commissioner Ralph, it was never a question of transparency. It was just a question of clarification. Thank you.
Very good. So we have a motion to go with the recommendation as stated in the Resolution 16-8 to hold in Judiciary Committee until next committee of the whole meeting on March 9th, 2016. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Going backwards here. Section 3, communications to be read and acted upon. Communication number 16-64, Norman Daniil of Landscapes of Montana, 2001 Porter Avenue, Butte, Montana, requesting Council of Commissioners consider approval of a land variance to erect a mine head frame on Butte-Silver owned land on North Main Street between the Butte, Anaconda, and Pacific Walking Trail and Clear Grit Terrace on tonight. Mr. Daniil.
The reason I'm here is because of a head frame that was brought to Butte to interpret Butte's silver history. We don't have anything right now within our historic structure to tell about our silver history, which preceded our copper history. And I'm a little bit surprised to be in front of you because I was just going to go straight to the board that considers land variances. I never realized I had to go to the Council of Commissioners. But alas, here I am, and I just want approval to go before the variance board with your approval and see if we can get a variance for about 30 by 60 feet on, which is the footprint for this head frame, and in addition to some signage to put on this land. The land right now is zoned as residential use. The head frame would go where the Clear Grit mine was, which was a silver producing mine, and we're using this particular head frame, which was also a silver producer, to interpret our silver history.
Thank you, Norm.
Pardon?
I said, thank you, Norm.
Anything else?
Commissioner Palmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Norm, I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg here, but you can go before the zoning board of adjustment to get permission, but you need permission, and I would think you would have to sign a lease agreement through the county to put it on the county ground first, and then, well, I guess it doesn't matter which way you go, but one way or the other, you're going to have to, you know, it wouldn't do you any good to go through the zoning variance first, I don't think, until you actually have a lease agreement. And I guess Mr. Sesso could explain the process for this or how it goes.
You came back, John. It's your fault.
Mr. Sesso, it is a land variance issue. Would you care to enlighten us?
Well, for the record, John Sesso, Planning Director, you kind of hit the nail on the head on the chicken and the egg. He really can't, he's actually applying for permission from the governing body, since the land is owned by Butte-Silver. He needs to have your permission to go before the zoning board, because he will act as our agent, because we're the landowner. He would be the agent, and if and to the extent the Board of Adjustments finds that the location can be acceptable, and he would then receive a use variance from the Board of Adjustments, it would be our expectation that one of the conditions of approval, should he get the approval from the zoning board, is that he would have to enter into a lease and follow all the standard provisions of a lease. And then if he was able to do that, then, you know, then he could roll towards his project. So we have made it our policy that, you know, if you're going to represent a parcel for a project that's owned by Butte-Silver, he's got to get that step. And so I would only ask that you maybe be real specific in your motion, that you are giving him enough authority to go before the Board of Adjustments and seek that approval from a land use question. And if the land use question rules in his favor, then he can come back, because one of the conditions will be that he has to enter into a lease. He's got a little road to hoe on the lease agreement. He needs a entity. It's unlikely that you would approve a lease that would be just with Norm, but rather than a group that, because in those lease agreements, as you have approved many times in the past, you know, there's maintenance requirements and insurance requirements and the like. And so that's why he's here. You know, it's rather than negotiate a lease and then have all that done and then go before the board, and then the board says no, it's better to get the land use question resolved. And then if it resolves in his favor, then he can come back to fulfill his conditions, one of which would be to sign a lease that you would have to then approve. So you said it best. It's I don't know which is the best order. It's kind of a unique situation, but we think for now, if you just give him at least the permission to try to get a use variance, that would be a good first step. And if he gets that far, then we'll be back.
Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Norm, can you explain to me just what has gone into this project so far? I know you have the head frame, but I'm kind of more curious about the putting it actually on the site. What kind of engineering is going into it? It's not like throwing up a little tiny head frame in a front yard. So I'm assuming that there's going to have to be some geotechnical work involved to make sure that it's going to be stable and all of that. If I'm going too far into this, just let me know, but I'm concerned about that.
Commissioner Morgan, try and help me to make sure that I am answering your question.
Okay.
The head frame was donated as a loan to Butte-Silver Bow. All the members of the head frame were numbered from where it was taken. A lot of the plate numbers, brass plate numbers, have been lost, but it doesn't take an engineer to figure out which elements go where. It's a fairly large head frame. It has the footprint of something that you might be able to compare it with is the butterfly at Old Lexington Garden Zone in Granite in Arizona. It's the same size footprint. It's about 36 feet high. It's a pretty sizable head frame, a wood head frame, by the way. All the elements are there for the head frame. There's some missing elements like a skip and a hoist drum and things like that, and that may still be brought to Butte. When the BLM brought it to Butte, they just didn't have enough flatbed beds. They would need 4 flatbed beds to bring it to Butte. They only had 2. So we got basically what we need. There's some rotten timbers there. BLM put up $6,000 to replace those timbers with treated timbers that are exactly the same dimensions, mostly 12 by 12s. Am I getting to what you're trying to elicit?
Commissioner Morgan?
So you got the head frame portion down. I got that.
Right.
What about mounting it to the ground? How are you going to bolt the thing to the dirt?
I was going to put 6 concrete pillars, build 16 concrete pillars and anchor it with strap metal, 8-inch strap metal. I'm anticipating that there may be a time, remember the property is zoned for residential use, that there may be a time that the property will be sold for residential use, in which case the head frame could be unbolted and moved to another location where the story can still be told. Does that help?
It does. The only thing that I want to make sure that you're thinking of is, to me, it's going to take a lot more than just throwing a concrete pad.
No, not a pad. Footings.
What was that?
Footings.
Footings into the ground. So we just need to make sure that they're properly engineered and they're going to hold the thing up. So that's all I'm concerned about. So. Good.
Should we get that far, I'm pretty confident we'll work with Mr. Daniil. It is on one of our reclaimed waste dumps, so we would have to
Right,
take
it
those
is.
pieces.
And not only that, but one of the commissioners on the Historic Preservation Commission offered to lend his services and his class members in his Historic Preservation class at Highland College to help erect it correctly.
Very good. Commissioner
With
Palmer?
equipment, no less.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Norm, just, have already brought this before the Historic Preservation Commission, it's my understanding, but at that time there were 2 proposals, one to have it erected at the Mining Museum and one where you're proposing.
Right.
The Historic Preservation Commission voted 3-2 to go to where you're proposing, to be able to go for a variance. But that was one of the conditions, that you get a variance to be able to put it there from the zoning board. So, there's a lot of information that I don't think this council has right now. And I'd just like to maybe hold us in the committee of the whole and give people a little bit of chance to think about it and maybe ask some questions, and then we'll act on it at that time.
You want to put that in the form of a motion?
Already too. So.
Is that a motion, Dan? Dave?
Yes, I'll move that we just refer it to the
Commissioner
committee.
Palmer, can I ask a question? I've been given only 18 months to get this thing erected and the funds available to do that. So I just don't want this thing languishing somewhere. And would I be able to give some apparently needed input to the committee of the whole on this? Yes. Oh, okay.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. You know, in response to Commissioner Morgan's, I would hope we don't have to hire a study or an engineering firm to do this simple little project that enhances our community greatly. I mean, let's keep it simple, stupid. You know, that's what they say, KISS. He's asking for a variance. You already want to hire an engineering firm to do a simple job. They didn't hire an engineering firm to put the lady on the Rockies up there. I mean, these are people that know what they're doing. Here's a guy that has beautiful structures around town. All he wants to do is get a variance. Mr. Sesso told us what we have to do. I would like to make a motion to follow Mr. Sesso's statement, whatever it was, to give him the needed go forward to do what he has to do. Without any further ado, give him that go ahead and let him proceed with his project. He does a wonderful job on his projects and he should have the 18 months time to get it done.
Is that a substitute motion?
I would make a substitute motion to that case, and I'd hope John Sesso could put that in the form of a motion for me. Thank you.
We haven't even seconded.
Yeah, we have no second there?
Second.
You second the substitute motion, but we didn't even get a second to John's motion, so.
Palmer's.
Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Palmer did, so. So on the question, Commissioner Morgan and then Commissioner Foley.
Just to clarify for the record, I didn't mean to go through and do a study. I just want to make sure that the thing is built so that it's not going to fall over like windmills have in the past. Not with you, but just to make sure that the thing is safe. And I just, if I don't say that, I'm not doing my job as a commissioner to make sure that the property of Butte-Silver is properly protected and the people of Butte are not protected. I know you've done great work. The Lady of the Rockies is still standing. It's still a modern marvel to a lot of people, but we're not rebuilding the statue of the Lady of the Rockies. I know this is a lot simpler, but I just want to make sure we got all our bases covered before we proceed down the path too far. So,
Commissioner Foley.
Thank you. Just maybe Commissioner Fisher can, this I think is maybe the recommendation is to give our permission to move forward, make a motion to move forward, to go before the zoning board of adjustment to request a variance, something to that effect, I think is what we need to say. I'm not correct.
Okay, so everyone knows what we're voting on, and it's been moved and seconded. We're voting to give Mr. Daniil the council's concurrence to move forward in seeking approval from the zoning board of adjustments to be able to get this lease, to get the variance so that he can procure a lease and move forward with the project. Okay, on the question, Commissioner Shaw.
Point of order, do you also want to have that continue to be held in the committee of the whole as a placeholder while Norm does that, or are we going to place it on file?
Place it on file.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just clarify.
Okay. Anything further on the question? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Norm. Section 4, please take note of the following 3 resolutions. Resolution 16.9, 16.10, and 16.11 referred to the judiciary. Section 5, ordinances for second reading. Number 1, Tracy, can you please read the title?
Council Bill number 16.3, ordinance number 16.3, an ordinance amending Chapter 2.72 of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, BSBMC, entitled Small Business Incubator Boards, and replacing the title with the name Business Development Center Advisory Board, and amending sections 2.72.010, 2.72.020, 2.72.030, 2.72.040, 2.72.050, 2.72.080, 2.72.110, and deleting 2.72.060, 2.72.070, and 2.72.090, and providing for an effective date herein.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Council Bill number 16-3, ordinance number 16-3 on second reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Seeing none, please cast your votes. All votes in. Clerk, can you please record?
10 yea and 1 nay.
Okay, ordinance passes. At this point, is there any public comment on matters that were not on tonight's agenda? Anyone in the audience wishing to provide public comment? Seeing none, move on to the calendar of other meetings and events. Please take note. Does anyone have anything to add? Commissioner Henderson.
Mr. Chief Executive, I just wanted to say on Park and Rec, we are meeting out at the EOC out there. We haven't been meeting in the conference room here at the courthouse, so if we could get that changed to the EOC, okay? Thank you.
We will get that changed. Thank you very much. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All those in favor? Opposed?